In Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein, there's a moment where the creature finds his creator and pleads with him to listen to his story. As the creature gives account of his murderous actions, the justification he provides is the following: "I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend." This sentiment is now mainstream in our culture, and it is the steam that pumps the pistons in our factory of victimhood. Agreement with this premise is what drives us to become victims. Not victims of real injustice, but victims of our own volition, shackled down with imaginary manacles forged inside the mind. This imagined victimhood holds us back from achieving what we truly desire in life. It is, however, possible to overcome.
In order for us to escape the mental prisons that we construct for ourselves, we first need to understand the philosophical framework of our jail cells. This is where we turn to Rousseau. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a Swiss philosopher who promoted the idea of the noble savage. This idea basically suggests that we humans are born pure and then later corrupted by societal influences. Now, what's notable is that at the heart of this idea, there's an inversion of the Garden of Eden story. Instead of us freely choosing to eat of the forbidden fruit, it is rather society which force-feeds us the metaphorical apple. In this premise, therefore, we are all victims, because if we were born pure, and now are not, then we must somehow be the victim of some corrupting societal influence.
Rousseau's reasoning was adored by Enlightenment philosophers and quickly spread throughout Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. While it has always been a strong undercurrent within Western society, only recently has it become the be-all and end-all of contemporary societal and political discussions. Currently, Rousseau's philosophy undermines our societal and personal progress on two fronts. It makes victimhood absolute, and it rids us of responsibility.
Traditionally, victimhood was understood as being circumstantial. A victim was someone who suffered under very specific circumstances and concrete acts. Examples of this might include an individual deported to Auschwitz, a family displaced by bombing, or a woman mugged in an alley. Now, under this understanding of victimhood, the circumstances say nothing about the quality of the individual. For example, the woman mugged in an alley is very rightly the victim of a crime, but on a personal level, she may still very well be a miserable and miserly individual. Her status as a victim does not render her inherently virtuous.
Contrast that with today, where victimhood is absolute. Because of our hyper-focus on personal experience and the supposed inherent purity of all, the victim receives an exalted status. The victim is untouchable and above criticism, because we assume that deep down, had they not been forced to suffer injustice, they would be virtuous and pure. This sentiment is nothing less than the refrain of Frankenstein's monster. "I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend." Such an approach to victimhood is perilous, not solely because it makes the victim morally irreproachable, but also because it does away with the concept of personal responsibility. In the world of Rousseau, even the oppressors are victims. A man only commits evil because of the evil once committed against him. It doesn't take a philosopher to recognize how both individuals and groups in our society can and do abuse this premise. On a personal level, we become victims because, admittedly, it's a natural temptation to blame others for our failures. It's a trope as old as time itself. In Homer's Odyssey, the god Zeus points this out by proclaiming, "Ah, how shameless, the way these mortals blame the gods. From us alone, they say, come all their miseries, yes, but they themselves, with their own reckless ways, compound their pains beyond their proper share." Several millennia later, both Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche added to this by identifying how our natural tendency to scapegoat enables us to ignore personal shortcomings and protect our ego. The philosophical term ressentiment, or resentment, describes this process. It's the process by which our ego creates the illusion of an enemy in order to reassign the pain we feel from our own inferiority and failures onto an external scapegoat.
Ignoring the obvious implications this has for society at large, let's focus solely on the level of the individual. This victimhood, this illusion, this ressentiment, all it does is keep us from attaining what we actually want. It binds us in mind-forged manacles, where we're so focused on what we don't have that we fail to see what we do. A victimhood mindset keeps us from seizing the opportunities that are in front of us and creating our own where there are none. It is the embodiment of the cautionary proverb that says that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Over 400 years ago, Shakespeare saw the danger in adopting this victimhood mindset, and he tried to warn us. As his character Cassius talks to Brutus about Julius Caesar, Shakespeare gives him these words to deliver. "Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his huge legs and peep about to find ourselves dishonorable graves. Men, at some time, are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings."
By adopting the philosophy of Frankenstein's monster, it's only natural we become like him. To triumph over a victimhood mindset, we must begin by looking inwards and embracing the conviction of Cassius. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.